Hello and welcome to episode 31 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, editor of TokeSignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. Before we do that, let's do this. Let's take a look at our Toke TV Bud Pick of the Week. We have a strain here called Blue Diesel. It's a sativa dominant strain. I found this at Green Thumb, Silverdale, for the bargain price of $9 a gram. If you go in there and you see Bud Tender Logan, tell him I said hi. Let's do the news, shall we? In Oregon on Thursday, we had an announcement from the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp. These activists are promising a big announcement next week, in light of recent news that the Oregon legislature has abandoned meaningful reforms this session. Initiative activists are moving forward with a new phase in their campaign to end criminal penalties for marijuana in Oregon. We salute the efforts of Representative Peter Buckley and other progressive-minded legislators, said Chief Petitioner Paul Stanford, and we are ready to pick up where they fell off and bring a pair of ballot initiatives restoring the progressive pioneer spirit that Oregon is well known for. Oregon has lagged behind other Western states in bringing reform to marijuana law. Two initiative petitions, IP 21 and IP 22, would change that. Prohibition doesn't work, according to Stanford. He said that filling our jails with nonviolent marijuana prisoners is a waste of public resources and people's futures. We will end prohibition, he said, and we will end criminal penalties for marijuana. Oregon's 2014 Initiative 21 is a constitutional amendment to end prohibition and stop imposing criminal penalties for marijuana. It already has 38,000 signatures. It needs 116,284 valid registered Oregon voter signatures by July 3rd to qualify for the November ballot. Initiative 22 is a proposed statute to regulate and tax marijuana and allow farmers to grow hemp for fuel, fiber, and food. It's gathered 25,000 signatures, and it needs 87,213 valid registered Oregon voter signatures to qualify for November's ballot. While we hoped that the legislature would do the right thing and refer this to the voters, we understood how difficult it would be given the current political climate, said another chief petitioner, William Apple. We are now ready to take these measures the rest of the way and give the choice to the voters. We'll have a big announcement next week regarding the next phase and our new partners, Stanford said. These measures are going to be on the ballot. Our initiatives are designed to move Oregon ahead of both Washington and Colorado, so Oregon's economy can reap the benefits of these rapidly growing industries sooner rather than later, according to Stanford. A few days ago, on Monday, we saw medical marijuana businesses bring $1.2 million into state coffers in a single day. Marijuana sales to adults will exceed that, according to Stanford, and hemp for fuel, fiber, and food will be bigger still. Oregon's economy will benefit from the end of the prohibition of hemp and cannabis. In Oregon's neighbor Washington this week, the Liquor Board issued its very first recreational marijuana license. The Washington State Liquor Control Board on Wednesday issued the state's first licenses to produce and process recreational marijuana during a board meeting at its headquarters in Olympia. The licenses were issued to Sean Green of Spokane, who will be doing business as Couchlock Productions, Couchlock with a K. This is a historic day, said Board Chair Sharon Foster. The hard work and preparation this agency has done has laid the foundation to make this pioneering endeavor a success. Couchlock Productions is licensed to produce and process, but not sell, recreational marijuana. It holds a restricted Tier 3 license to produce marijuana initially up to a maximum of 21,000 square feet. This company is one of more than 2,800 producer license applications that the WSLCB is currently processing. Licenses will be continuously issued as they are ready, according to the Liquor Control Board. The LCB will update its weekly list of pending and active marijuana licenses on the frequently requested lists page of the public records section of its website. You can find that link at hemp.org on the story. Mark Kleiman, interestingly, Washington State's one-time top marijuana consultant, wants to restrict pot growing as much as possible, drive up prices through scarcity, impose a minimum retail price, and have pot sold exclusively through state-run stores while closing down the state system of medical marijuana access points. He makes his arguments in the Washington Monthly, current issue. Kleiman got paid about $818,000 by the taxpayers of Washington to set up the state's system of legal marijuana distribution. But this UCLA policy professor is of the opinion that legalization moves, like Washington's, risk creating a monstrosity, that's a quote, that encourages drug abuse, that's another quote, and puts kids at risk, that's another quote. The stated mission of the Washington State Liquor Control Board is to promote public safety by consistent and fair administration of liquor and cannabis laws through education, voluntary compliance, responsible sales, and preventing the misuse of alcohol, cannabis, and tobacco. In Colorado, police want more money for marijuana enforcement. Wait, this is legalization? Colorado's police chiefs are asking the state for more money for marijuana enforcement, whining that they are disappointed in Governor John Hickenlooper's plan for how to spend cannabis taxes. In a letter sent to the governor earlier this week, the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police complained that Hickenlooper's plan has no money specifically for local law enforcement. That letter asked the governor to support the creation of a program to give grants to police departments to cover the extra costs related to marijuana legalization. Now, if that sounds strange, after hearing all these years how marijuana legalization would save on law enforcement costs, then yeah, it does. Many of our local law enforcement agencies have diverted staff from other operations into marijuana enforcement, leaving gaps in other service areas as a direct result of marijuana legalization, the letter whines. The association wants the marijuana money for training officers to identify stoned drivers, for buying oral fluid testing to catch impaired drivers, and creating a statewide database of marijuana crimes. The budget proposal, which Governor Hickenlooper sent the legislature last month, predicts marijuana revenues in Colorado of more than $133 million in the coming fiscal year. Governor Hickenlooper proposed spending $85 million of that money on youth marijuana prevention and addiction treatment. Just over $3 million is designated for statewide law enforcement programs. Department of Public Safety Executive Director Jim Davis was quick to smooch cop butt in an emailed response to the Chiefs Association. We are confident that once we fully understand the needs and plans, we can submit and support supplemental funding requests, Davis brown-nosed. In New Hampshire, the House this week approved a bill that provides legal access to medical marijuana. House Bill 1622 in New Hampshire would allow licensed patients to cultivate up to 2 mature marijuana plants until an alternative treatment center, that is, a dispensary, opens near their residence. The New Hampshire House of Representatives on Thursday approved a Bill 227-73 that will provide people who qualify for the state's medical marijuana program with legal access to medical marijuana while the state develops a system of regulated medical marijuana cultivation and distribution. That bill now moves to the Senate, where it will receive a public hearing. HB 1622 is sponsored by Representative Donald Ted Wright, a Republican from Tuftonboro, and it would allow licensed medical marijuana patients or their designated caregivers to possess up to 2 mature marijuana plants and 12 immature plants or seedlings. Patients and caregivers would be required to report their cultivation locations to the Department of Health and Human Services, and they would lose their ability to cultivate once an alternative treatment center, read a dispensary, opens within 30 miles of their residence. We applaud House members for continuing to stand up for people with debilitating conditions who could benefit from medical marijuana, said Matt Simon, the Goffstown-based New England political director for the Marijuana Policy Project, which supports the bill. Seriously ill patients in New Hampshire have waited long enough for legal access to medical marijuana, and some simply cannot afford to wait any longer, according to Simon. House Bill 573, which created New Hampshire's medical marijuana law, was signed into law in July by Governor Maggie Hassan. A provision which would have allowed patients to cultivate their own marijuana was included in the version approved by the House, but it was removed by the Senate after Governor Hassan threatened to veto the bill if cultivation was included. The Department of Health and Human Services is not required to finalize its rules for authorizing alternative treatment centers until January 2015. If House Bill 1622 is not approved, therefore, patients are not expected to have legal access to medical marijuana until at least the summer of 2015. We hope the Senate will agree these people deserve to finally be protected from arrest in the live free or die state, Simon said. Bills allowing home cultivation passed the Senate in 2009 and 2012, so we are optimistic senators will once again listen to the needs of patients in 2014. In Michigan this week, the Senate moved to let landlords ban their tenants from smoking or growing medical marijuana. Michigan landlords could easily ban tenants who are medical marijuana patients from smoking or growing their medicine under this bill, which advanced on Tuesday in the Michigan State Senate. Senate Bill 783, sponsored by Senator Rick Jones, a Republican from Grand Ledge, Michigan, was approved in a 31-7 vote by the Senate. It would codify into law an opinion from the notoriously anti-marijuana Michigan Attorney General Bill Schuette, who said that hotel, motel, or apartment owners could prohibit the use of medicinal cannabis without violating the state's voter-approved medical marijuana law. Under this bill, medical marijuana patients would be banned from growing or smoking cannabis if they have a written prohibition from their landlord. If they continue using their medicine after being ordered to stop by their landlord, they could be jailed for up to 90 days and or get a $100 fine, according to a Senate Fiscal Agency analysis of the legislation. Jones is the same one who originally requested Attorney General Schuette's opinion back in 2011. He claimed landlords in his district had complained about medical marijuana patients who created unpleasant odors for their neighbors. State Senator Rebecca Warren, a Democrat from Ann Arbor, voted against the Jones bill after the Republican majority defeated her proposed amendment seeking to link the bill to a House-approved measure to legalize various forms of medicinal cannabis edibles. According to a recent decision from the Michigan Court of Appeals, pot, brownies, and other edibles aren't a usable form of marijuana under Michigan's medical marijuana law. If the argument today is that we want people to be able to take their medicine but not smoke in property they don't own, there's something this body could do about that, Senator Warren said. She voted against Jones's bill after her edibles amendment was shot down. Jones claimed he had no problem with Warren's edibles proposal, but argued that the bills are unrelated and should not be linked. Several marijuana advocates spoke out during a committee hearing last month. They suggested that this bill would damage patient protections and potentially lead to arrests for behavior which is currently protected by the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act of 2008. Those immunities were intended to protect patients in their employment, driving, and housing, but all three protections have been squandered at one point or another, according to Thomas Levine, an attorney with Cannabis Counsel in Detroit. The state's dishonest administration of the medical marijuana law in every branch of government proves that it lacks the compassion needed to administer such a law in practice, according to Levine. This bill would truly make de facto police officers out of landlords and insert criminal penalties into what is currently consumer contract, said Denise Policella, an attorney who has represented both medical marijuana patients and landlords. By removing protections of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, you are telling them they are no longer patients or caregivers, and that places them squarely into our public health code as simply drug users at that point. SB 783 now heads to the Michigan House. Michigan's neighbor, Ohio, has a lot of support for medical marijuana, but activists there lack the money to pass an initiative. An overwhelming majority of Ohioans believe medical marijuana should be legal, according to a poll released last week. But the Buckeye State appears unlikely to change its cannabis laws this year because a ballot drive doesn't have enough money and the Republican-controlled legislature won't bring the issue to a vote. Advocates with the Ohio Rights Group have gathered only 50,000 of the more than 385,000 signatures they would need by July 2nd to qualify for November's ballot. Estimates for the amount needed to gather the remaining signatures and to run a campaign run as high as $10.5 million. They only have about $50,000 in donations they've received or have been promised. Ohio has no fewer than 3 medical marijuana amendments whose language has been approved by the Attorney General, Mike DeWine, and the bipartisan Ohio Ballot Board. The Ohio Cannabis Rights Amendment has the most signatures. It's the one with 50,000. But the supporters would need to hire a signature gathering firm within a month to have any hope of qualifying for the ballot, much less finance a campaign if they manage to squeak onto the ballot. The Ohio Rights Group said it wants to meet with national groups, such as the Marijuana Policy Project and the Drug Policy Alliance, both of which have helped to fund initiatives in other states. So far, the MPP, DPA, and other national groups haven't met with the ORG, according to John Pardee, president of the group. But Pardee said he had heard the national groups were open to the idea of a meeting. National donors should be excited by the 8-to-1 support medical marijuana enjoys in Ohio, according to Bob Petrakis, a political scientist at Columbus State Community College who ran for governor in 2006 as the Green Party candidate. Even Republican respondents to last week's Quinnipiac University poll supported medical marijuana at the rate of 78%. The other side can have a ton of money, but to blast away at 87% support, that maybe might get it down into the 60s, according to Petrakis. A slim majority of Ohioans in the poll, 51%, said they would support legalizing small amounts of marijuana for adults for recreational use. But despite the 87% support for medical marijuana in Ohio, the state's politicians won't legalize it through the legislature. Representative Bob Hagan, a Democrat from Youngstown, has introduced 2 bills. One would legalize and regulate marijuana like alcohol. The other bill would allow patients to use cannabis for medicinal purposes. Hagan has only 1 Democratic co-sponsor on the legalization bill and only 2 on the medical marijuana bill. I think that there's a fear of people branding them in the next election as pot-smoking ne'er-do-wells, Hagan said of his fellow lawmakers. I'm confused at why they continuously ignore the issues that I think would relieve a lot of people who are suffering from pain. 20 states have already done it. Why are we so slow? But Republican Speaker of the House, Bill Batchelder, a Republican from Medina, Ohio, said he can't imagine a scenario in which either measure advances in the House. I know what's happened with the opioids, he said last week. I know what's happening in our schools, what's happening with children who are presented with a dish full of medications. Ohio Governor John Kasich took a stand against medical marijuana in 2012. Physicians tell me we don't need that, he claimed. There's better ways to help people who are in pain. Marijuana is safer than any opiate drug out there, said cancer chemotherapy patient Rob Ryan of Cincinnati, who is also president of the Ohio chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, Ohio NORML, and also worked for Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP. Opiates kill people, Ryan said. Marijuana doesn't. Before we go this week, let's take a look at a couple of must-reads on tokesignals.com. The first of these was written for us by Dr. Robert Townsend from Michigan. Is it dangerous to decriminalize marijuana? A physician's view. And Dr. Bob was moved to write this after he read a misleading guest editorial on the dangers of decriminalization. He thoroughly debunks those reefer madness fears in this piece. Is it dangerous to decriminalize marijuana? A physician's view, and it's well worth your time to pursue that. If you would like, on the other hand, to read a quite unscientific article, you can find one of those as well. If you are wondering how much credibility to ascribe to this particular piece, let me just tell you, it comes from the Onion News Network. This new marijuana study, Onion News tells us, says everyone knows you're high and you will likely be stoned forever. According to the American Journal of Medicine, you're not making any sense and everyone thinks you're weird. Everyone can smell marijuana on your breath and in your clothes, and everyone is laughing at you. If you hear a noise, that's probably the police, and you're probably going to go to jail. New research indicates that your brain got broken. and you probably shouldn't have done this. I hope that this hasn't scared you away and that you'll be back next week for episode 32 of Toke TV. Join us again, and until then, stay lifted.